Most of the watches you've bought, you probably overpaid for. And the worst part is, you could have gotten the exact same watch for hundreds or even thousands less, just by buying it differently. In a majority of situations, buying on the secondary market is a better financial decision. Although, there are some cases where going retail actually makes more sense too. In this video, I'm going to break down why most collectors should prefer the used market, when it could be better to go through an authorized dealer, and how to decide what's best for you and the watch you're buying. Let's start with why the secondary market is usually the better option. The biggest reason is simple: price. You can expect to save anywhere from 10 to 50% off retail depending on the brand, model, and condition. With few exceptions, the first owner takes a depreciation hit of buying it new, and you benefit from this. This is especially true with non-hyped luxury brands such as Zenith, Glashütte Original, Breguet, and tons more, where the price drops off hard as soon as the watch leaves the store. And when you factor in tariffs or VAT for importing in many countries, purchasing used domestically is often the cheapest option. It's the safer financial decision too, beyond just saving money. If you ever need to sell, you'll likely retain most, if not all, of what you paid for it used. But it gets even better too, because buying used also allows you to stretch your budget into a completely different tier of watches. For example, Omega's new Planet Ocean has a retail price of $9,200. For around 20% less, you can get something like a lightly used Glashütte Original CQ, which is frankly on another level in finishing and quality than the Omega. The Panorama Date version retails for over $14,000, but you can get them like new for half that. With the same budget, you have the ability to own watches you could never afford otherwise if you go used. And just because you buy something secondary doesn't always mean buying used. You'll regularly find unworn, like new in box, and mint condition pieces for a fraction of the full price. I purchased my Speedmaster at around 35% off retail, with the full set, and the only flaws it had were a few scuffs on the clasps. And that's fairly common too, especially with plentiful models from lower end brands like Seiko, Citizen, and Hamilton, where overstock is being sold at a discount online. Why pay full retail when you can get the same watch online new for less? The secondary market also gives you access to watches you can't get at retail. Discontinued models, sold out limited editions, and vintage pieces. It may sound like a downside due to price scalping, which can happen, but in many cases it's a blessing to still have access to rare or older models. At retail, you're limited to what brands want to sell you now, their newest collections and most expensive offerings. On the secondary market, you get access to a brand's entire catalog over decades. And of course, there's the obvious I haven't mentioned yet. When you can't get a watch allocated at retail, with brands such as Rolex, AP Patek, or FP Journe, secondary is often your only option. You can still get one, but at that point, it's a matter of how much you're willing to pay. Which brings us to when retail actually does make more sense. If you enjoy this sort of analytical approach to watches and collecting, consider subscribing. I post a new video every week and love to see the discussions in the comments. We just passed our last goal of 500 subscribers and are trying to get to 1,000 next. Thanks. Even though I believe that collectors should almost always go secondary on their purchases, I won't deny that buying retail should be preferable. You get a brand new watch and you'll have no doubts on its authenticity. So when does buying at retail actually have its place then? First and most important is when purchasing at retail is actually cheaper than used. This usually happens with new releases and highly desirable but scarce models, where their price is actually inflated on the secondary market. With Watches and Wonders coming up, expect this with most of the models that'll be announced there. For 6 months to a year, the demand is huge before prices settle. Watches need time to become available on the used market, so if you want it now, retail can actually be the better move, if you're lucky enough to get it allocated for you. Another reason is if you're buying from a niche brand, micro brand, or want an unpopular model that just doesn't show up on the used market very often. Waiting months or even years for it to pop up randomly isn't an option sometimes, especially if you want a specific configuration of a watch that comes in many different styles. At retail might be the only place you're going to find exactly what you want. If you're buying an inexpensive watch, it often isn't worth buying it used. Saving 20% on a $6,000 watch is $1,200 saved. 20% on a $150 one is $30. That $30 isn't worth the effort, risk, and used condition you'd be getting the watch in. Sometimes it just makes more sense to buy it in new condition to avoid the headaches over a few dollars. Finally, if it's really important you get the watch in completely new condition, particularly if it's a gift, retail makes the most sense. Don't be that guy and get someone a used watch as a present, unless that's something you know they'd be cool with. But if you're buying it for yourself, I find new condition to be overrated. The watch is meant to be worn. It's going to get scratched. Paying extra just to be the first one to do that just isn't worth it, when you'll get the same result after a few months anyways. Especially because finding watches in like new condition is so common. Before discussing how to apply all of this to your own situation, let's go over some common justifications I've heard for buying retail that just don't really hold up. The reason I see thrown around most is that buying retail helps with building a relationship with the AD. To me, this has got to be one of the most lame excuses there is. The AD isn't your friend. It's their job to get you to spend as much money as possible. If you're buying watches you don't even want to maybe get access to the one you do, you're probably down more than you would have been just buying secondary. The AD games are getting ridiculous at this point, and I advise anyone doing this to ask themselves if they have any dignity at all. Why would you suck up to someone who gatekeeps you from the privilege of buying a luxury item worth thousands of dollars? The warranty when buying new is one that sounds reasonable, until you actually run the numbers. Take for example the Omega Seamaster 300M. At retail, it's $6,700. You can find them used for around $4,400 or even less. Omega servicing cost for a Seamaster is $800. Even in the worst case scenario of needing to service right away, you're still saving $1,500 buying used. And most of the used examples I found came with a warranty anyways, which often completely negates this argument altogether. The discount on the secondary market almost always exceeds that of the servicing cost. Authenticity concerns are a valid reason, but way overblown. You should always be buying the seller when going secondary by buying from reputable dealers. Do some basic research and learn what the dial, text, and movement look like, and learn if there are fakes and how to spot them. You should already be doing most of this research if you're willing to spend thousands of dollars on the watch. And if you do, your risk is very low. Of course, it's still possible to get a fake watch, especially with a Rolex. But with proper due diligence on the seller and watch, this shouldn't be a major concern. I often hear that it's just plain simpler to go through the AD. And it's true, retail is easier. I suppose that is, after all, the peak luxury attitude, paying way more to be lazy. Maybe it's a difference in mindset, but if saving thousands of dollars requires only a little bit more effort, it's probably worth it. So how do you actually apply all of this to your case? If you're not already, get into the habit of researching watches you find interesting on used marketplaces. Search around on Chrono24, Watch Recon, and eBay, and get a feel for market prices of different brands, styles, etc. For the specific watch you're going to buy, break it down by price, and then by brand if needed to know what to do. For under $500, you're usually going to want to buy it new. For mainstream brands such as Casio, Seiko, Citizen, Orient, etc., look around for discounted listings through Google and Chrono24. If you can't find any obvious discounts, you'll probably be paying full retail price. Other brands in this category, especially Chinese watches, don't waste your time looking for discounts and just buy full price. Between $500 to $1,000, start checking the used market. This is right around where meaningful discounts begin, particularly for low-end Swiss-made watches. Common microbrands should be fairly easy to find listings for as well. $1,000 to $5,000 is a sweet spot for some of the best value on the secondary market. You should always be checking used first in this range. Often, $5,000 Tudors, Omegas, and Grand Seikos can be found for nearly half off. This is also where scarcity begins to become an issue too. If your desired watch is really new from a popular brand, it's very possible it'll be unobtainable for a good while after its release. Similarly, microbrands begin to be a bit more niche here, so going retail may be necessary if you can't find any from the brand you're looking at used. Otherwise, be ready to pounce on new listings because it may be half a year until you see one again. For $10,000 and up, you have two categories: hype pieces and everything else. If you're in the market for a hyped watch, you have to choose between waiting to try and get it from the AD or paying the premium on the secondary market to get it quicker, or even at all. For pretty much everything else, almost always used will win if the watch isn't incredibly niche. Particularly for brands such as Breguet, Zenith, IWC, and JLC, buying retail rarely makes sense financially when you can get such deep discounts on them used. Another underappreciated brand that perfectly represents the price drop-off on the secondary market is Frederique Constant. FC is already known for the great value proposition and affordable high complications. Today's obscure reference in particular is probably their best example of this. the perpetual calendar manufacturer. At around $12,000 to $13,000, this watch is the most affordable mechanical perpetual calendar on the market, if you could even say that for a 5-figure retail price. That alone is already impressive, considering you don't really see perpetuals showing up on the market until about 20 grand. What makes this watch relevant to this discussion is that on the secondary market, its cost plummets due to the brand's relative unpopularity. You can commonly find these for around $6,000, all the way down to around $5,000 or even $4,000 occasionally. This puts the FC Perpetual into a category of its own, completely outside the rest of its field in its complication space. I don't exactly understand why more people aren't talking about this watch, because what FC is doing here is astounding. Especially when you consider that you can get their High Life Perpetual for a similar price if the classic design doesn't appeal to you. There doesn't seem to be any big downsides with this piece either. It's an automatic with reasonable dimensions, the design is clean, and it even comes with a moon phase and nice movement finishing. If anything, it just goes to show that there's slept-on brands out there doing tremendous work at a great value, and going secondary only increases the quality you can get out of your hard-earned dollar. At the end of the day, I really believe that going used is almost always the smarter option. Every watch in my collection I bought used, except my SKX, which I bought secondary new. And honestly, I'm not sure I could have justified owning them if I had paid their retail prices. But even if I could, I don't think I would have. Part of collecting for me is finding an amazing watch for a great deal, and making the most of my budget to get the best value possible. It's a recurring theme on this channel for a reason. Perhaps it defies the principle of luxury watches, but I'm not into watches for the status or luxury. It's alright if it is in imperfect condition. If that means I can get an even better watch for my money and actually wear it, I'll take that trade-off. What do you prefer, buying secondary or new? Are there any aspects I missed in my analysis? I'm sure a lot of you have strong opinions on this, so let me know in the comments. And if you're interested in buying watches used, check out this video on 5 enthusiast Rolex models you can actually buy on the secondary market for a fairly good price. Thank you for taking the time to watch.